Hello everyone, Jason Tripp here. Tripp Advisor coming to you from my trailer on Manitoulin Island. It is Shark Week, and so we've got a special treat today. Taking a look at the Jaws board game by Ravensburger, the adaptation of the 1975 Steven Spielberg directed classic film. We'll take it to the table now. We'll see how it stacks up to the movie. And if we survive, we'll come back up and I'll give some of my final thoughts and my report card. It's Jaws, it's Shark Week. Pull up a seat at the table. Tripp Advisor, Tabletop Tuesday. Alright, hello everyone and welcome to Amity Island, the site of both the first act in the film Jaws as well as the first act in the Jaws board game. I say first act because unlike most board games, this board game actually takes place in two acts. And on one side of the board here, I've set up the first act. Later on, I'm going to flip over the board to the other side to get to the second act. So the first part of the game takes place on Amity Island, paralleling the film, the northeast of the United States, leading up to and during and following the 4th of July weekend. And then the second act of the game, paralleling again the film, takes place on the Orca, the boat that is used by the main characters to try and track, catch, and ultimately kill this killer shark. And so here's the components and the setup. I'll just walk through all the various components, the setup, and then we'll get through the game flow for the first act before we flip over the board and talk about the second act. So 4 characters in the game. The game plays 2 to 4 characters. Unlike most board games, this is a one versus many board game. And so one player will assume the role of the shark, and the rest of the players, if it's just a 2-player game, one player will control the other 3 characters in the game. I like it with 4 because everybody gets to control one of the other 3 main characters. For those of you not familiar with the movie or need a refresher, the other 3 characters, one is Chief Brody, the Amity police chief. And so the person playing him will take his character card. As well, you want to give that player the binoculars as well as the beach closed sign. Another player assumes the role of Hooper. Hooper is the oceanographer, played in the film by Richard Dreyfuss. He also gets this fish finder token. And the third character is Quint, the local island big fisherman, catches large fish, sharks, and so he gets that player token as well as 2 of these barrel tokens that stay on his player board. You'll put the corresponding colors matching the player boards on the map in the locations we have set up. And so Brody, you might recall if you're familiar with the film, Brody ironically has a fear of water that he has to overcome ultimately during the film. So during the first act of the game, just like in the movie, he stays on land, so he's moving around the island doing various tasks. So he begins at the mayor's office here in the northern part of the island. Hooper is on his white boat here, the blue character matching the blue card. You just start him at the dock on the westernmost side of the island. And Quint starts on his boat, the Orca. You can put his character on board and he starts on the dock on the easternmost part of the island. You'll also want to put these swimmer tokens near the board throughout the course of the first act. Various swimmers will be placed at the various beaches there. We've got 4 beaches, north, south, east, and west beach. You'll see the map is broken down into various quadrants, either by number or by letter. That's important for a number of reasons. First and foremost, because before we get into the flow and the 3 phases of each round of Act 1, whoever's playing the role of the shark will need, first of all, they'll put one of these red tokens, attach that, make sure you're on Act 1. Each of the player cards has an Act 1 side and an Act 2 side. So in Act 1, you'll attach one of these. And as you eat swimmers, because that's ultimately the shark's goal in round one, you're going to be swimming, trying to stay undetected in the waters and eat swimmers, up to a maximum of 9 swimmers. And so as you're munching on swimmers, you'll move the red tracker up on the shark token there, on the shark board, excuse me. But before the game starts, whoever's playing the role of the shark will want to take the shark tracker. Now inside the shark tracker, it's very important you keep this hidden. You'll see the map, which parallels the map on the board, and you'll see this column that says location. So at the start of the game, you're going to pick secretly a starting location on the map. Either numbers 1 through 8 or at one of the 4 beaches. So for example, let's say I'm playing the shark and I want to start the game at the South Beach. I will simply write S and the location beside start. And then as the game goes, every round I'll continue to write my location where I am at the start of, or where I finish at the end of each round. I'll also circle swimmers that have been eaten at the various beaches. And there's 4 power tokens that the shark can use during the course of the round. If they use any one of those power tokens, they circle which one they've used. I'll talk more about those in a moment. But that's the initial setup. But once the shark has picked the starting location, the game in Act 1 goes through 3 phases repeatedly, and Act 1 will end in one of 2 ways. It'll end when the shark either has eaten its maximum of 9 swimmers here, or when the other players successfully attach 2 barrels. Once 2 barrels have been attached to the shark, that immediately triggers the end of Act 1. And depending on how well the shark did with eating swimmers, that determines how many shark abilities and crew gear they get for the second act of the game. So that's the setup. Now, as far as the phases of Act 1, there are 3 phases. You'll note here the last part of the setup is putting these Amity event cards close to the board. Each round of Act 1 begins by flipping up one of these Amity event cards. So I'll take the top one here, I flip it over. This one says 4th of July. And so on each card you'll see a number of letters corresponding to beaches. In this case I have 1 for each of the 4 beaches. So that means I immediately take one of these swimmer tokens and I put it at each beach. So I'll put one on the west, south, east, and north beach. So there's 4 swimmers on the menu for the shark in round 1, and then I'll read any specific details or special rules that apply just to this corresponding round. So it says, before placing swimmers, open all beaches. Beaches cannot be closed this round. So during the course of the game, beaches can be closed. I'll talk about that in a moment, but this round, no beaches can be closed. Brody is the one who has the beach closed token here. He's the only one that can close beaches, but because of this particular event this round, he's not able to close any beaches. So all beaches are open for swimming, which means the menu is wide open for the shark. So after the event phase, the shark will take the shark's turn. And as it says, it's clearly laid out on the player cards here. The shark can take up to 3 actions. And the possible actions are either move 1 space or eat 1 swimmer. Also, I mentioned the shark has 4 special abilities. They can use these once. Once you use them, you lose them. I'll just go through these. The first one here is called Out of Sight. Whenever the shark chooses to use that ability, the shark becomes invisible to Hooper's fish finder and to Brody's binoculars. I'll talk about those items shortly, but that's one special ability the shark can use. Another one is called Feeding Frenzy. For 1 action, the shark may eat all swimmers at a beach. So instead of using 1 action to eat 1 swimmer, if there's 3 or 4 or 5 swimmers on 1 beach, they can eat them all in 1 gulp using the Feeding Frenzy token. Third one is called Evasive Moves. The shark does not trigger any motion sensors this round. And I'll talk about what the motion sensors are, how they're activated shortly. And the last of the 4 special abilities of the shark is called Speed Burst. Once this round, the shark may move up to 3 spaces with 1 move action. And so those are to be used at appropriate times to the shark's discretion to try and evade getting barrels attached to them. Again, if they ever use one of those, they need to circle which one they've used in which round, and they also need to track how many swimmers are eaten at each beach. So for example, let's say the shark, I'll put the token on the board. In the game it would be hidden, but let's say the shark started at the south beach. They know that and they alone know that. I'll just put the token for teaching purposes. They have 3 moves. Well, for 1 move they could eat 1 swimmer. So they wouldn't remove it. They would simply circle swimmer eaten at south beach. And then they would have 2 more moves. So they could move over to 1 quadrant here. You can't go diagonally, so they can move from S to 4 to 7 or to the dock. Let's say they wanted to move to 7, and let's say to be safe they want to move to 3. 3 is this whole section here to stay in the deeper water. And so they would take their moves and then they would announce. They wouldn't announce where they were or where they are. They will simply write on their board in round 1 they are now at number 3, so they will write number 3. They will circle an S because they ate a swimmer on South Beach. They didn't use any of their power tokens. They're going to save those. And so they would simply announce to the rest of the players around the board how many swimmers, if any, were eaten and where. So they would say 1 swimmer has been eaten on South Beach, and so that means this poor chap here on South Beach gets removed from the game. Of course, also the shark would track that, bumping this up to number 1, showing that they have eaten 1 swimmer so far during the course of the game. Then it's the players' turns to take their turns collectively. So we've done the event phase first, then the shark takes the shark moves, and now, in any order, the 3 characters can take their moves. So let me just walk through the options for each character, starting with Brody. Again, Brody only moves on land. The shark gets 3 actions. Each player gets up to 4 actions. And so here, nicely laid out again, are the possible actions that Brody can take in Act 1. Brody can simply move 1 space on the board, staying on land, of course. They can rescue 1 swimmer. So if they move to a beach and there are swimmers at the beach, they can use an action to remove that swimmer from the beach. Of course, you don't want to have too many swimmers accumulating on the beach, especially because the shark can play that feeding frenzy card. So you want to try and keep the population at the beach limited. So that's something Brody and Brody alone does, rescuing swimmers. Brody can also pick up a barrel from the shop. You'll see here on the board, Brody starts up here, and all these barrels here, they can be picked up because you'll want to bring those to one of the 2 docks during the course of Act 1. You want to get a number of barrels steadily delivered to Quint and Hooper, and so they can drop those barrels to try and get a barrel on the shark. So he can pick up barrels, he can drop barrel. You only pick up the barrels from the shop. You only drop the barrels at one of the 2 docks. And then you can use the binoculars once per round. Again, the binocular token goes with Brody. To use the binoculars, you must be at one of the 4 beach spaces. And once you're there, you can use the binoculars. If you use the binoculars from the beach, the shark has to answer whether or not they are at that beach location. It's basically Brody peering out from the beach. It's one way to identify if the shark is hovering around at one of the 4 beaches. And the last possible movement, although because this activity card, remember the first event card was beaches cannot be closed this round, so for this particular round Brody will not be able to do this, but normally he would if he's at the mayor's office. So the mayor's office is where he starts the game. He can also go down to the south part of the beach where the police department is. If he's at one of those 2 locations, he can close a beach. So let's say he wanted to close a beach later on in the game. He can announce which beach he wants to close if he's at the correct spot. Let's say it's the West Beach. you would put the sign on the west beach saying no swimming, beach area closed. That removes everyone from that beach. And then the next round, you flip the token over, it says opening soon, and then the following round, the beach is open. So whenever a beach is closed, if a new event card comes that would normally put swimmers on that beach, you ignore that because that beach has been closed. It's another way to keep the number of swimmers limited to help the cause during the course of Act 1. So those are all of Brody's possible actions. Let me just walk through Hooper's possible actions on his turn now. And so he's got a number of actions, again, all laid out here. Again, up to 4 actions. He can move, he's got a little faster boat than Quint. He can move up to 2 spaces. So for one movement, this might be an opportunity. Okay, you know that a swimmer was eaten in South Beach, so he may want to move, you know, over to South Beach or the area. He can move 2 spaces with 1 turn there. He can rescue a swimmer. So if he's on one of the beaches, much like Brody, he can rescue that particular swimmer. He can pick up barrels. So barrels will be launched during the course of the game. He can pick up some of those barrels. He doesn't have the ability to launch the barrels. That's Quint. We'll get to him shortly. But he can pick up barrels that have been launched in any of the water quadrants. He can also, having picked up those barrels, he can give all those barrels to Quint. And he can use the fish finder. And this is a good opportunity to talk about what the fish finder does. So let's say during the course of Hooper's turn, he moved and he's at this spot now here, and he wants to use the fish finder. He simply announces to the shark player that he's using the fish finder, and the shark has to do one of 3 things in response. If the shark is in the same quadrant where Hooper has used the fish finder, the shark must announce that they are there. And if that's the case, you would put the shark token there. We're just using it for the sake of teaching today. But you would put the shark token there if that's the case. If the shark is not on that space where the fish finder is being used, but is adjacent, so either in quadrant S, W, or 3, where the shark actually is in this case, they would announce they are nearby. So in this case, the shark would say, I'm nearby. And so that allows the other players to know they're in one of 3 quadrants. And that would be the end of the turn for Hooper. That's all the options they can do. Let's talk about Quint. Quint is on the Orca boat. He has a number of things he can do on his turn, up to 4 actions. He can move only 1 space. His boat's a little slower than Hooper's, but he can move 1 space. So in this case, he could either move to the E, to the S, or to the 4. The outer quadrants are a little bigger. It's a little faster to get around the island if you go in the deeper waters. Hooper just fell in. Much like the other characters, he can rescue a swimmer as well. Of course, he has to be on the beach where the swimmers are. Quint can pick up any barrels that have been launched. And Quint's unique ability is he can launch a barrel once per round. And you launch a barrel either into your space or on an adjacent space. And so in this case, if Hooper had just done like we shared in the example, if he's determined that the shark is somewhere adjacent, usually you want to do Hooper before Quint, because if you can use Hooper and Brody's binocular and fish finder abilities to kind of deduce where the shark might be, then Quint can kind of possibly move in and hopefully get a barrel down on the shark. So let's say Quint takes his 4 actions here. They know the shark is in one of these quadrants. Maybe they're assuming, hey, maybe the shark hasn't moved. Maybe he's staying at South Beach trying to fool us. So maybe Quint wants to move into the deep water here and then wants to launch a barrel into South Beach. then the shark has to announce whether or not he is in South Beach. In this case, the shark would say, "No, I'm not in South Beach." If the shark was in South Beach, that barrel token would then be taken and would be placed on the shark's board, showing that one of the two barrels has already been attached to the shark. In this case, the shark is not at South Beach, but the barrel will remain there with a motion sensor attached to it. And that means anytime the shark swims through or into that particular zone, they have to announce in future rounds that they have triggered a motion sensor. And so one way to limit the shark's movements is to keep a couple barrels in the water at various locations to try and hamper the shark's movement through the water. And so basically that's the flow of the game. Again, you start by flipping up an Amity event card. It's simple enough. You add swimmers where you need to. Bear in mind any special rules for that round. And then the shark will take their turn. They will move. They will potentially use one of their special actions. Again, if they've used one of their special actions, they simply have to announce they've used one. They don't have to say which one they've used. And once they use them, they can't use them for the remainder of Act 1. The game continues in that fashion. Again, you take all of one of the character's movements, and then you take all of another character, then all of another character. And so you can decide in which order you want to use the character. Again, the tip is usually more often than not you want to use Quint after the other two. Use the other two to try and rescue swimmers or deduce the area the shark is in, and then send Quint out to launch those barrels in the hopes of attaching them. You continue on in that fashion until the shark has either eaten all 9 swimmers, the maximum, or once the second barrel has been attached to the shark, you will then proceed to clear the board, flip the board over to Act 2, and I will now get to Act 2 and explain how the game continues, not on the island, but now on the boat. Okay, having completed Act 1 of the game on Amity Island, now we've flipped the board over, and now we're not on the island any longer. We are on the Orca, and Act 2 of the game proceeds from here. Depending on how well the shark did, or how well the crew did in Act 1, dictates how much gear the crew gets and how many special shark abilities the shark player gets. So what you do is you take all the player boards, flip them all over to Act number 2. You're going to add these red clips at the top of each card. Just for the sake of example, let's assume the shark successfully ate 7 out of a maximum 9 before getting 2 barrels attached to them in Act 1. So in this case, the shark abilities for Act 2 will be 8, and the total crew gear will be 5. So as part of setup, based on that, we take the crew gear deck, which has been shuffled, count out 5 of those, and we're just going to put those up here at the top of the board. And so we've got a canister here, we've got 3 packs of ammo, and a shark cage. You know what, for the sake of example, let's change out one of the ammo to get some diversity there. We've got a fishing pole as well. Talk a little bit about how those are used shortly. As well, the shark ability, as we said, eating 7 swimmers means the shark gets 8 shark ability cards. So we'll just leave these face down by the shark player board. Much like in the first round, where in the first act, where the shark had some special abilities. When they attack the ship, they have the ability to use one of their 8 cards. Once those 8 cards are exhausted, they won't be able to use anymore. As well as the crew gear, which can generally be used by all crew members. Brody, Hooper, and Quint have their own 2 gear each. So Brody gets a pistol and a baseball bat. Hooper gets a hammer and a rifle as their 2 weapons. And Quint, just like in the movie, has a machete and also a flare. You want to give each player one of these target tokens of the corresponding color as well. There will be 3 dice that are used for the shark attacking the ship in this round as well. Those can remain close to the board. The shark will also get these A, B, and C tokens. You can give those to the shark player as well. Each of the crew can choose where on the Orca boat they want to begin, so we'll just put them all in different spots. In order to build this side, there are 8 pieces of the boat, like a little puzzle. You'll want to put those with the white and the black number face up. As the shark attacks the boat will start to get damaged and those cards will flip over, but this is the way you set it up at the beginning of Act 2. You've also got a deck of resurface cards. You'll put those where it says deck, and you're going to flip up A, B, and C each round in Act number 2. Whereas the first act had sort of 3 phases each round, the second act has 6 phases. Again, it's nicely outlined here on the shark card, just to give you a step by step of how the rhythm and the flow of Act 2 works. So you follow these 6 steps. Just go through them, and then we'll revisit each one in more detail shortly. So the first of the 6 steps is the resurface options, and we'll do that now. We'll turn over these 3 resurface cards on top. I'll explain those momentarily. And those are the possible places in which the shark is going to surface for their attack. And then the shark will choose which of the 3 red spots corresponding to the 8 quadrants on the boat they want to resurface. And then the crew then prepares for attacking based on where they think the shark will resurface. The shark then reveals which of the 3 options. In this case, we've got this quadrant here, which would correspond to this spot on the boat up here. The bottom corner on the left here is an option, and the top right corner of the boat is another option. So the crew will prepare, then the shark will reveal, then the crew will attack using a combination of their weapons at their disposal or the crew gear, which is a one-time use. And then finally the shark attacks, and I'll walk through what that involves. So we've got these 3 resurface options here. Then the shark will choose, and how the shark chooses is they will secretly take these tokens A, B, and C, A corresponding to the first card, B or C, and they will simply put one of them face down. So let's say the shark wants to surface down here by Brody. At B, they would simply take the B token and they would put it face down on their player board. Once the shark has chosen, then the crew now prepares. So they will take their aiming token and they will put it on one of the 3 potential spots where they think the shark might resurface. If they guess correctly, they have a chance to do some damage to the shark. If they choose incorrectly, they do not discharge their weapon as they realize the shark came to a different spot on the board. And so let's say, just for the sake of example, they want to hedge their bets. So let's say Brody ends up, Brody wants to protect his area where he's at. And let's say Hooper places his token up here and Quint places his token up here. So that's how the crew prepares. Of course, they could focus all of their efforts in one location, and if they choose correctly, they can do more damage to the shark. But if they all choose poorly, they won't. They'll all sort of aim in the wrong direction. They won't inflict any damage to the shark. Every time the shark takes a hit, they move their token down. Starts at 0 to a maximum of 18, and that's one way the game can end. If they inflict 18 hits of damage to the shark has been defeated and the crew wins. The other way in which Act 2 can end is if all 3 of the crew members take their maximum amount of hits. Each crew member can take 5 hits. After the 5th hit, the 6th hit kills that crew member. So if one crew member is eliminated, the other 2 or 1 continue to play. And the third way in which the game ends, as we'll see shortly, is when pieces of the boat start to get destroyed by the shark. If the boat is completely disintegrated, that's another way in which the shark wins Act 2. And so the shark has chosen, the crew has prepared. Now at this point the shark reveals, in this case they reveal that in fact B was where they're going to resurface. And so at that point they put the shark token in the water, right there. And we see that now the crew gets to attack. So Quint and Hooper chose the wrong spots, but as the crew was hedging their bets, Brody chose the right quadrant. So Brody gets an opportunity now to attack the shark in this quadrant here using either the pistol or the baseball bat. At this point I should talk a little bit about the weapons, the different types of weapons and how they work. Some weapons are long range, obviously a pistol, rifle. If you see this target symbol here, that means you can take aim at the shark and discharge the weapon from any distance on the board. Weapons like the baseball bat are melee weapons. If you see the fist symbol, you need to be within reach, obviously, to swing the baseball bat. So you either have to be on the same space or adjacent to the shark in order to use the melee weapon. So in this case, because Brody is on the same square, he might want to save his pistol, because the reality is when you shoot your pistol, after shooting the pistol, you either need to get rid of the pistol because you're out of ammo, or you need to get rid of one of the ammo tokens available in your crew gear. So he wants to save that for later. So in this case, Brody will choose to use the baseball bat. You look at the number of dice on each card to determine the attack. So in this case, there are 2 dice symbols, and it says if your attack misses, re-roll both dice. The new results are final. And so there's 3 dice in the game. You'll take 2 dice on the dice. Each die either has a blank, a 1, or a 2. And depending on where the shark surfaces, you'll see a number of symbols here. You'll see a fin symbol here, and you'll also see a die symbol. The fin symbol is how evasive the shark is, the shark's defense. So in this case, if Brody's total is 2 or less, it does no damage to the shark because the shark can evade up to 2 hits. This symbol here, the die, is how many dice the shark gets to roll when the shark attacks. But the crew attacks always first before the shark. So in this case, Brody's using the baseball bat. He gets 2 dice, and he's looking to get a number greater than the evade value of the shark, which is 2. So he will roll the dice, and he rolls a 2. It's equal to the shark's evade value, so he would miss. But because it's the baseball attack, he gets another roll, so he gets an opportunity to re-roll. And on his re-roll, again, he rolls a 2. The shark evades the hit, so no damage is done to the shark in this particular instance. Again, because Hooper and Quint were targeting the different possible resurface options, they don't get an opportunity to attack the shark, and that completes the crew attacking the shark. Now, the next step is after the crew attacks, now the shark will attack. This is the final part of a round. And so the shark attacks based on where it resurfaced. So the shark will always attack either a crew member who's in the water, and the crew can fall off the boat when that part of the boat gets disintegrated, or they simply attack the part of the boat adjacent. So in this case, the shark would be attacking this boat piece here. In this case, the shark has 1 die. If the shark would have come up in another spot, it would have been able to use 2 dice, but because the shark resurfaced here, the shark gets 1 die to roll. Now, this is where it's important to see what is on the actual boat. And so you see this number here. There's a white number and there's a black number. The white number is 1 and the black number is 3. That means if the shark is able to roll at least 1, that means the boat, that part of the boat has been damaged and now gets flipped over to the other side. If the shark rolls a total of 3, this part of the boat is immediately destroyed and would be removed from the game. But in this case, because the shark is only rolling one die, the most it can get will be a 2. So the shark gets a roll. The shark rolls a 1. 1 is enough to do some damage to that back end of the boat. And so this will be flipped over. However, the rule is whenever the shark damages the boat and flips the token over, if there was a crew member on that particular token, they fall into the water, and that gives the shark 1 immediate bonus attack using the amount of dice on their resurface card. So in this case, 1 die, they will get 1 more attack going directly after the crew member who is in the water. For a guy who hates the water, is not a good swimmer, Brody did well in this case. The shark rolled a 0, so fortunately for Brody, there will be no damage taken by him. That now concludes 1 round of play. The game continues in that fashion. You'll discard the resurface cards, you'll discard any weapons or ammo that was used, you'll give the players back their aiming tokens and inflict any damage according to how they did in their attacks. The shark, if the shark does use an ability, I should talk about those. Some of them, they're pretty self-explanatory, but let's just look at this one called Big Mouth. It says if the shark damages or destroys a boat space, each crew member on that boat space takes 1 wound. So I didn't look at these beforehand, but it probably would have been a good idea to use this card. In this case, regardless of the roll, Brody would have taken 1 wound immediately before that extra attack happened. And so they're pretty self-explanatory. I'll leave those for you to explore, but the shark can choose to use one of those. They announce with which one they're using before they take their attack, and then they discard that card. In this case, they have 8 to choose from, and once you use them, you lose them. Same with the crew gear. I'll leave the other gear for you to explore on your own. However, there are some other symbols on the crew gear, in particular this symbol here, the hook. That's an attached weapon, and so that weapon simply attaches itself to the shark until the shark can shake free. How the shark shakes free is if a resurface option comes up with this symbol here, and it decides to resurface on that particular card, they will shake free from any attached weapons that have been attached to the shark. So the important things to remember is that just the proper order, the resurface options, the shark secretly chooses, the crew prepares by putting their aiming tokens, the shark then reveals and shakes off at the same time if possible any attached weapons. The crew always attacks first, but only the crew members who have successfully chosen the correct resurfacing option. They roll accordingly using their weapon as explained on the cards. They can use the extra crew gear as well, but like the shark abilities, those are a one-time use. So once they're used, they will be discarded from play, and then the shark attacks. You continue in that fashion until either the shark has taken 18 damage, each crew member has been destroyed, killed by taking 6 damage each, or the boat is completely destroyed. And that is how you play both Act 1 and Act 2 of the Jaws board game. Very similar to the movie. Let's go back up to the table now, and I'll give some of my final thoughts and my report card. Okay, final thoughts time for Jaws, the board game, the adaptation of the famous 1975 film. And let me tell you, I was cautiously optimistic when I bought this game. I bought it at Target in the States, and I'm a little skeptical whenever there are games that try to adapt movies. More often than not, they're quite underwhelming. But this is one of the better ones, and I hope the tutorial did it justice. But let me go through the report card scores now and give some final thoughts on Jaws. As far as the theme is concerned, this is one of the most immersive, one of the most deeply thematic games I own. They didn't just paste on the Jaws title. You actually feel like you are in the Jaws movie when you play this game. Whether you're in Act 1 on the island or Act 2 on the boat, this game is pretty intense. Sometimes when we play, we actually put on the Jaws soundtrack when we're playing. On the Amity Island cards, there's actually quotes, and the crew gear, there are actually quotes from the movie. So sometimes we even quote the movie, and you can really kind of immerse yourselves in this game for a couple hours. And I think the theme is just phenomenal. So kudos to the designers for making this feel a lot like you are in the movie. I'll give it an A+ for the theme. 2 big thumbs up for the theme. The aesthetic value of the game, it's not the best looking game by any stretch. Again, it's a Ravensburger Target game. It's decently priced, but you're getting some tokens that are okay. They're not the most attractive, but the artwork on the cards is satisfactory. You've got some solid dice. The components are well made overall, so we'll give the aesthetics a B-. As far as the replayability, this game is highly replayable. This gets to the table semi-regularly with my family and friends. It's replayable because every game will give you a different story because of the theme and because it's so immersive. You'll always have a funny story to tell. Like the first time we played, I think we finished the shark off with a baseball bat. Just kind of ridiculous. And so it's very replayable. There'll always be a story to tell. It's enjoyable. And you can really choose if you just want to play the first act. If you like the first part of the game, you can just play standalone the first act, or you can just jump right to the boat and play the second act. It's really your choice. And so the replayability is high in this game, and I'll give it an A. As far as the gameplay and the game flow, I hope you saw the game does flow well throughout the game. Everything is laid out very well, and on the cards, as I said, it tells you who can do what. So there's quick reference guides to refer to if you get bogged down. It's easy to flow through the game. Oh, the rain is just pouring here at the trailer. Let me start that part again. As far as the gameplay and the game flow, the game does flow well. I just gave you a brief taste of the flow of the game, but the rule book is well laid out for both Act 1 and Act 2 if you need to refer to anything as well. I just love how the player cards, they tell you the flow of the game, do this, then do this, then do this, here's all your options. So a lot of good quick reference guide to keep the game flowing and not get too bogged down. So I'll give the gameplay and the game flow an A. As far as ease of play, like I said, because of the rulebook, because of the reference guides, it's not too difficult to learn how to play. There are a couple finicky little rules in Act 2 regarding the adjacency rules on the boat, etc. We were actually playing this with one rule wrong when we first started playing it out of the box, and so you'll want to pay careful attention to the rulebook in that regard. But overall, it's pretty easy to learn and pretty easy to play, and just after watching this video, I think you'll be on your way, no problem. So I'll give the ease of play a B+. It does say it's age 12 and up, and my 10-year-old handles this one no problem. And then tactics and strategy. Again, this is one of the strengths of this game. Whether you're playing the shark or whether you're playing the crew, there's a lot of, if you're playing the crew, there's a lot of strategy together, talking about social deduction, working together, who's going to go first, where should we aim on the boat, when to use the binoculars or the crew gear. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to strategize. And the shark, there's a lot of strategy to think how you're going to fool and remain evasive when the crew's trying to track you down. And it usually is a pretty balanced game. More often than not, the crew does win, but it's very close. It often gets down to 1 or 2 pieces of the boat left on the board. And so there's a lot of tactics and there's a lot of strategy right to the end of this game. So overall, I'll give it an A. Final thoughts for Jaws. You're going to need a bigger space on your board gaming room. Definitely want to pick this one up. Jaws, the board game, really does a good job in paying tribute, paying homage to this classic movie. So on this Shark Week, if you're looking for something to get to the table, highly recommend you take a look at Jaws. Also recommend you come back and join me later this week. I do Theology Thursday and Film Friday videos occasionally as well. This Friday, being Shark Week, I will actually be giving my review of Jaws, the movie. You're not going to want to miss that. And so whether you're getting this game or another game to the table this week, I hope you have an awesome time gaming. Game on.
Yeah.